Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is a long one. This is a really long one. We're back again with the Fat Electrician. The one-man army who captured 132 Germans. Alvin York. I don't think I've heard this story. He may have mentioned it in one of his other videos. Something along those lines. Could be wrong. This is me we're talking about. My brain is, like, cooked completely. Anyways, let's hop into it, right?
They probably instinctively just jumped to John Rambo, the fictional hero from the Vietnam War. Well, John Rambo is actually based off of a real war hero, Roy Benavidez. Roy Benavidez joined the army because he wanted to be like Audie Murphy, the most decorated war hero of World War II. And Audie Murphy joined the military because he wanted to be like this man. Today we're talking about Alvin York, a 6-foot, 215-pound, red-headed hillbilly blacksmith from the mountains of Tennessee that was drafted into World War I despite his desire to be a conscientious objector due to his devout Christian beliefs. By the time his paperwork had cleared recognizing him as a conscientious objector, he decided to go into combat anyways because he had become convinced that he was on a mission from God to protect.
Hold on, is that a giant fucking hammer on the table behind him? Maybe.
Innocent, and he would go on to become one of America's greatest war heroes in World War I. And we're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsor.
Who we got?
Oh my God.
I told you it was big.
I mean, I know you said you were packing heat, but Jesus.
And you thought it was going to be smaller than your forearm.
No.
What the hell is this?
I mean, it's rigid, it's hard. I don't see how anybody can ever be disappointed with something like this. Miracle people survive.
What? What? Wait. Why does he have a little boy? Why is there a little boy? I want to know.
Hi, Gavin.
All right, here's the deal. Super simple, straightforward business model. Give them
Damn it.
Make sure the data
No.
brokers on the internet aren't selling you.
Back up, dude. I want to know where you got the little boy replica. Just call me excited over nothing. I want to know for reasons that I don't need to. I don't need it.
Your personal information. What does that even mean? Okay, here's the entire internet and every free service on the planet inside of a nutshell. Okay, there's a saying: if you're not paying for the product,
you are the custom or the product.
What that means is pretty much everything on the internet that you use, that's a service. Whether that be Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it. Okay, it's all an app. So one of two things.
Yeah.
They're either going to feed you ads, and that's how that company makes money since their service is free, or they're going to collect your personal information, then turn around.
You know what blows my mind is that apps that you pay for still, and then put ads on top of that. So it's like, really? You're gonna charge me a smaller fee to have ads still, but it bugs me. It bugs me.
Sell it to data brokers on the internet, and then they're going to turn around and sell it to whoever buys it. And next thing you know, you're getting 17,000 robocalls every single day. And that's where Delete Me comes in. They will look through all the major data brokers and find the ones that are selling your personal information and submit opt-out requests.
That's probably every single thing out there.
Obligated to comply. And then they'll continue to monitor these data brokers, and if they get your information again, Delete Me will submit an opt-out request again. Basically, you're paying Delete Me to get rid of all the downsides of all of the free stuff on the internet, which I think is absolutely worth it. If you want to check them out, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video.
I love how fast he does his ad reads.
All right, our story begins on December 13th, 1880.
He does his ad reads so elegantly fast that it's an art form of itself.
1987, when Alvin York is born. He is born, he has a mother, a father, 2 older brothers, and would later go on to have 8 younger siblings.
Holy crap.
And they all grew up in a 2-bedroom log cabin
Oh, no.
in Pall Mall, Tennessee, right next to the Kentucky border. The York family has been in this exact spot for generations. Alvin's great-great-grandfather originally settled
Well,
here.
cans.
When he first lived there.
Sorry.
He was living inside of a cave. They then later...
Elon? Exelon? I don't know.
Peter built this log cabin, and that cave was converted into a blacksmith shop. The same exact blacksmith shop that Alvin works in as an apprentice his entire childhood underneath his dad when they're not busy farming their 75 acres and going hunting for food. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to explain to you that these are straight up mountain folk and have been for hundreds of years, okay? They're devout Christians living out in the rural area by themselves. They just want to be left alone to their own affairs and be self-sufficient, and his family is very, very good at it. Now, Alvin was the third oldest, the third son of 11 siblings, and I don't want to say he was the favorite child, but him and his dad did have a very special relationship because he wanted to be just like his dad. He was attached to his dad at the hip from the time that he could walk. He was getting up every morning, going hunting with his dad, then he was coming back and he was working in the field with his dad. Then they were coming back, eating dinner, and he was going out and making horseshoes and working in the blacksmith shop with his dad, and he did that for his entire childhood. One of the things that Alvin excelled at the most was hunting. He was just a natural marksman.
Oh no.
He was
I was like, oh no. Is this guy gonna be an ace shot? Every time the dude that does, every time there's a farmer, it's the farmers. No one suspects the damn farmers. But then again, this is back in the day. If you had to do hunting and stuff, you had to be a good shot. So if you didn't get, if your shot sucked, you didn't eat, basically.
Extremely accurate. By the time he was 10 years old, he was so accurate with his rifle that when he went turkey hunting, rather than shooting the body and ruin a bunch of the meat, he would opt to just blow the turkey's head off completely, saving all of it. This is with a Civil War era black powder musket, not a shotgun, so that's extremely impressive. By the time he was a teenager, the nearest town, Pall Mall, Tennessee, would have shooting competitions every weekend, and sometimes these shooting competitions would have prizes. There'd be 4 separate events. If you won one of the events,
he going?
the prize wasn't cash.
He's going.
Cow, so you would actually win.
He's going.
That cow. Young teenage Alvin York would walk miles into town, partake in the shooting competition with his muzzleloader, win all 4 events, and then opt to just take the whole cow and walk it home so he didn't have to carry all the slaughtered meat himself, and he would then slaughter the cow once he got home. Not only
what the hell?
Extremely accurate with a firearm, but by the time he was 18, 19, 20 years old, he was a pretty big dude by that point in time. Like, he was the biggest guy in his family and the biggest guy in town. He was a 6-foot redhead coming in at 215 pounds that had been doing nothing but running around in the woods hunting for food and blacksmithing his entire life. He was built like a brick shithouse. He was so big and so jacked compared to everybody else living up in the Appalachian Mountains that they would just refer to him as Biggin. You know, as in like, hey, go talk to Alvin about that. Oh, okay, sure. Which one's Alvin? Fucking the Biggin. And this has been his entire life at this point, his childhood, his teenage years, his early 20s, just hunting out in the woods, blacksmithing, farming, getting food to survive, minding his own business, and going to church on Sundays. That's what he does. That's all he ever wants to do. It's just a perfect, peaceful, happy life. As time goes on,
nice.
older brothers wind up finding wives. They move out. They start their own families. Now Alvin is the oldest sibling in the house. And then in 1911, his father passes away, and Alvin becomes the man of the house. And Alvin obviously does not take this that well. His dad was his best friend. He was attached to the man at his hip his entire life. Not only is he gone and he lost his friend, but he has to immediately step in and fill the giant shoes that he left behind to provide for his mother and his 8 younger siblings. During this time, Alvin quits going to church. He picks up a drinking problem, a smoking problem, a gambling problem. He's doing everything he can to make money and provide for his family, but any free time he has, he's spending at the bar getting belligerently drunk. Over the course of the next couple of years, Alvin gets a reputation for being a troublemaker. He's always getting in fights, both fists, knives. Thankfully, he's able to avoid gunfights because anytime somebody wants to pull a gun because he's a big dude, he pulls out his gun and shoots something as a demonstration of how accurate he is. One account said a man pulled a gun on him. He pulled out his gun and then shot the head off a lizard behind him. At which point, that guy was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm good. Put the gun back away. Probably the correct answer. This is a question. How does he always get in all these fights, but he never actually gets in trouble? Well, one, this is the early 1900s in rural Tennessee and Appalachia, so there isn't much law enforcement. But to make things worse, his preferred bar is known as the Blind Tiger, which is literally on the border between Kentucky and Tennessee. And inside the bar, there's a white line painted across the floor labeling each state. Kentucky and Tennessee. So even when the sheriffs did show up, all anybody in the bar would do is if the Tennessee sheriffs showed up, they would walk over to the other side and be like, you don't have any jurisdiction here, and vice versa.
You're just out of our jurisdiction.
And so if I'm across the line and you're over there, there's no way that you...
Now to us, modern day people, obviously this sounds a little bit ridiculous that they would just walk across a painted line on the ground like it was, you know, a salt line that demons can't cross and law enforcement can't get you. But back then, it's really how it went, because if 1, 2, even 3 deputies showed up to a bar fight and there's 40 people in the bar and they all walk to the other side and they're like, you have no jurisdiction here, and the other 40 dudes all have guns, guess what? You don't really have any jurisdiction here. The only jurisdiction you have is to lose a 40-on-3 gunfight. It was 1912. 1912, rural Tennessee. There's no calling for backup for the sheriff's department. There's no local police department. There's no highway patrol. There's no National Guard, no FBI, no feds. Nobody's coming to back you up. If you get into some shit with the wrong people, you're just going to be another motherfucker that went missing in the mountains of Appalachia. The end. Alvin York is just kind of an unstoppable terror on the town when he's drunk. He gets mean. He's huge. You can't beat him in a fist fight. You can't beat him in a gunfight. There's not really anything to do to the guy. He winds up getting accused of selling stolen guns, never gets in trouble for it. He'd walk out of the bar at sunrise, absolutely hammered. A rooster would crow. He'd pull out his gun and shoot somebody's rooster just because he'd be drunk in the middle of town yelling while church is in session, trying to disrupt everything. Just, there was nothing anybody could do about the guy, and this went on for years. And the entire time, he's just breaking his mom's heart, because this is not the sweet young kid that she raised. This isn't the man his father was. This isn't the man he was supposed to be. He was supposed to be his dad version 2.0, bigger and stronger and hopefully even better. And he's just not turning out that way. Then on New Year's Eve, 1914, Alvin goes out drinking, comes back home, 3 in the morning, pissed drunk, and his mom stays up all night waiting for him, and she finally confronts him and just says, Alvin, when are you gonna start being the man that your father and your grandfathers were? And the words hit Alvin like an absolute truck. He knows what he's been doing is wrong, and he just breaks down. He's literally on his knees, sobbing with his head in his mom's lap, crying and apologizing. He promises his mom he's going to turn it around. He's going to start going to church again. He's going to give up gambling, smoking, drinking, fighting, everything. He's going to be the man his father was and the man that he was supposed to be. And his mom just says, I know you will. And that's it. January 1st, 1915, Alvin York is a completely new man. He gives up all of it. He starts going to church again, and he just starts doing all the things that he should have been doing all along. I'm paraphrasing here, but he would later go on to write that essentially he had fought an awful lot of men at this point in his life, and the fight that he had with himself to give up drinking and smoking was absolutely the hardest fight he ever had. But he does it, and within a couple of years, he's an elder in his church.
Well, yeah, I figure you didn't have anything to wean you off that stuff back then. You had to cold turkey that, basically.
He's literally teaching Sunday school to kids, and he's overall just an upstanding member in his community. His reputation isn't fully repaired yet, but it's definitely getting better. Around this point in time, he falls in love with the girl down the road, Gracie. He meets up with her in private all the time. They never do anything wrong. They never kiss. They don't even hold hands. But they just talk, and Alvin York wants to marry this woman. Problem is her father does not approve, because he's only been an upstanding member of the community for a couple of years now, and he was an absolute terror for like 5 years before that, and he's not convinced that Alvin York is a good man yet. And York just kind of accepts that. He knows that he did wrong, and he's got to prove that he's a good man now, so he just gives the father more time and just keeps being an upstanding member in the community. He keeps seeing Gracie, but they never kiss, they never hold hands, they never do anything that would be considered wrong for, Christians in the early 1900s. And that's his plan. He's going to prove to Gracie's father that he's a good man over time, and then he's going to marry that girl, make her his wife,
what goes wrong?
and go on to live happily ever after. But then in September of 1917, he gets a red card in the mail from Washington, D.C. Alvin York has just been notified that he is to go sign up for the draft to go fight in World War I. Now, he's a devout Christian at this point. He truly, truly believes in his heart, thou shalt not kill. He does not think that he is supposed to fight, kill, do any of that business, and he does not want to go off to war and do it. So on the draft card they sent him, where he's supposed to fill out all of his information, they ask on there, are you a conscientious objector? He checks yes. Explain your reasoning. He simply writes, I don't want to fight, and mails it back off.
I'm not fucking leaving.
Obviously, that gets rejected. Alvin York, kind of not knowing what to do, goes to the pastor for help. The pastor helps him file an appeal to send it off to Nashville, and with that appeal, he has 2 sworn statements, one from Alvin, one from the pastor, saying, hey, this is his religion. He's not supposed to be killing people. He should be recognized as a conscientious objector. They mail that off to Nashville, and it still gets rejected again. And the reason behind that is because Alvin York's sect of Christianity was Pentecostal, which is a fairly new sect of Christianity at this point in time. I believe it started in the early 1900s as kind of a veer off from Methodist. So the draft committee in Nashville is essentially like, look, this is a new church. It's not nationwide. It's not well recognized. All the other mainstream Christian denominations, Catholic, Orthodox, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, they're all getting drafted and going off to war. You guys can too. At this point in time, unless you were like actually a pastor or priest in one of these Christian denominations, conscientious objector status was more reserved for like Quakers, Amish, and Mennonites. So that's it. Alvin York's getting drafted. By November, he's got orders to report for duty, and by February, he is attached to G Company of the 328th Battalion of the 82nd Infantry Division, also known as the All-American Division. Now, typically at this point in time in World War I,
I was just thinking, do they have film, the ability to film stuff in World War One? Like, I know my history's a little fuzzy on like the moving pictures and stuff. So I'm just curious, like, did they have the ability to film?
War II, divisions are kind of divvied up by the region that they come from, right? Like the 34th Infantry Division is a bunch of guys from the Midwest. The 77th Infantry Division is a bunch of guys from New York and New Jersey. The 442nd Infantry Regiment is a bunch of Japanese Americans from the West Coast and Hawaii. But the 82nd Infantry Division in World War I is kind of an experiment because they just threw everybody into the same infantry division. They've got people from all 50 states, and 20% of the men weren't even born in America. So you can imagine the culture shock for Alvin, some hillbilly that's lived in rural Tennessee his entire life, probably never traveled more than 60 miles away from his home, and now he's in this place surrounded by people from all 50 states, Poles, Italians, Greeks. It's absolutely crazy. Alvin later said he'd never seen a group of men that could out-drink, out-curse, and out-fight these guys, and that's why they are the All-American Division, because they are the embodiment of the concept of the American melting pot. And that's why their logo today says AA on it, for athletic alcoholics. I mean, All-American.
He's absolutely right.
So he goes into training. York starts doing everything he's told to do to the best of his ability, but in the background, he's still kind of trying to go through the paperwork, go through the chain of command, and get himself trajectory, because at the end of the day, he still does not want to go off and have to take somebody's life, because he truly believes thou shalt not kill.
You know, quite a bit of killing does occur in a war.
Despite that, if push comes to shove, it's looking like he might be the best man at doing it, because he grew up his entire life no-scope headshotting turkeys with a Civil War era muzzleloader, and the Army has just given him a model 1917 Enfield high-powered rifle chambered in 30-06, and this thing is an absolute killing machine in the hands of Alvin York.
You think it's an Enfield?
He is sitting there in training, hitting bullseye after bullseye. He is the best shot in the entire division. You got to remember, pretty broad group of people. There's a lot of people in this division that grew up in a city that have never even seen a rifle, and Alvin's been handling one since he could walk. Also, around this point, York starts keeping a diary, mostly just his personal thoughts on how he's dealing with the potential, internal struggle of having to go off to war and take somebody's life when he doesn't feel like that's the right thing to do. And eventually, word gets around that York is keeping a diary, which is against the rules because you're not supposed to keep a diary, because you could write down important intel, and if you get captured off in war and they capture your diary, you could end up betraying information to the enemy. So his commanding officer, Captain Danforth, kind of confronts him about it and is like, hey, are you keeping a journal? At which point York, being a devout Christian man not wanting to lie, kind of dodges the question. He says, sir, I'm not saying whether I do or whether I don't. At which point the captain says a diary is going to betray you and your comrades. At which point York replies, sir, I didn't come to fight in a war and get captured. If the Germans want to get any intel out of me, they're going to have to get it out of my dead body. And that's coming from the 215-pound redhead brick shithouse hillbilly that only knows how to hit bullseyes. So the captain's like, fuck it, all right. And York just keeps maintaining this. But because York was honest with Captain Danforth, he kind of comes to him and is like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I think I should be a conscientious objector. I do not want to go after combat and have to kill somebody. I truly believe thou shalt not kill. Captain Danforth doesn't have that, authority to grant him that, so he kicks it up the chain of command, and he ends up talking to his boss, Colonel Buxton. Colonel Buxton, a devout Christian man, but unlike York, he also believes that Christians have an obligation to go off and fight for their country when it's needed. So he calls York into his office. York shows up. York explains everything, devout Christian, elder in my church, thou shalt not kill. At which point Colonel Buxton is like, so do you believe everything that's in the Bible? To which York is like, absolutely, yes, sir. At which point Buxton hits him with a verse from the Bible. Luke 22, he who hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. York immediately fires back with another piece of scripture that supports his position. Then Colonel Buxton fires back with another piece of scripture that supports his. And they go back and forth having this
The very first epic rap battles of history.
Picture rap battle.
He said it.
It's like two wizards having a battle with Bible verses for over an hour. It's absolutely crazy. And then Colonel Buxton ends up winning when he hits York with Ezekiel 33. If the watchman sees the sword coming and blows no trumpet, the blood of the people is on his hands. And this shatters York's entire worldview. York has this epiphany. Maybe he's been sent there by God because he's the watchman. Maybe he's supposed to be there to protect the innocent. So now he doesn't know what to do. But unbeknownst to him, while this has been going on, his pastor and Gracie and his mom back home have been writing every politician trying to get him recognized as a conscientious objector. They even wrote the office of the president, and they got it pushed through. York receives the paperwork. All he has to do is sign his name on the dotted line, and he will be recognized as a conscientious objector. But now he doesn't know if that's what he's supposed to do. Maybe he's supposed to go off and fight in this war. So Captain Danforth gives him 10 days to go back home and figure it out. He goes home, he sees Gracie, she supports whatever he's gonna do, and then he just goes out in the woods on his favorite rock with his Bible, and he sits there for 36 hours reading the Bible and praying. Doesn't eat, doesn't drink, fasts the entire time. We don't really know what happened up there, but we do know when he comes back down, he decides that he's gonna go off to war. Okay, pause, just so we're on the same page. Whether you're religious and believe in this type of stuff, or you're an atheist, or you're religious but you believe York might be a little bit crazy, none of that matters. The only thing that matters with this now is that the 6-foot...
It sounds like he went up there to re-verify everything that he had the Colonel, and to try to find some inner answers too, and then came to his own answers.
Tall, redhead, brick shithouse expert marksman now believes that he is on a mission from God to defend the innocent, and that should terrify absolutely everybody. Okay, and if you don't understand the significance of this, I've been doing combat sports my entire life. Taekwondo, karate, boxing, kickboxing. I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. I've got certifications in MACP from my time in the Army. If you name a combat sport, I've probably done it to some extent, and I've done it against a broad demographic of people, and I'm telling you right now, the toughest people on the planet are these rural farm kids that grew up in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. You borderline have to kill them just to get them to slow down, and that's why they're doing it for fun, okay? I've never had to compete against one of these dudes when they thought they were on a mission from God to defeat me, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to. It sounds like an...
I just realized, it just sunk in. That's fucking terrifying. These guys are already statted different than you, because that's their life. To hunt, to survive. They're not city folk. They are like, they were built in the wilderness. They are literally built differently. And then you have one that's like religious and believes now that this is his mission sent to them by the Almighty. It's just like, no, I ain't crossing swords with that one.
Absolutely horrible time. So York finishes up his 10 days of leave, heads back over to G Company, reports to Captain Danforth. Captain Danforth asks him if he wants to fight Germans. York replies, if a man can make peace through fighting, he's a peacemaker. And with that, they ship off to war. May 1st, they board the ship to head across the Atlantic Ocean, and York has never seen the ocean before. It's the most beautiful, incredible thing he's ever seen in his entire life. He's just...
Well, I've never really left this town.
...struck at its beauty. And then 5 minutes later, he's violently puking, and he gets seasick the entire voyage. So the 82nd makes it into theater in June 1918, and they spend the first couple of months there.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people in the First World War wouldn't, excuse me, wouldn't have seen the ocean, because so many people just stuck to their town, stuck to their farms, because that was life.
They're kind of getting rotated into reserve positions. You know, they're occupying trenches that aren't seeing a lot of combat, or they're going out on patrols. They do see some combat. They get hit with artillery. There's sniper fire, but it's not the front line. Like, it's not where all the action is happening. Despite that, during this time, York really lays down a pretty impressive demonstration of his faith, because this dude, again, believes that he's on a mission from God, and in his mind, God's not going to let him get hurt, and even if he does, it's part of God's plan, so it's okay. He does not give a fuck about anything. Like, they have enemy artillery fire coming in, everybody else is hitting the dirt, hiding in foxholes, and York is just standing there like, it'll be fine, God's gonna protect me, which sounds stupid, but it's not stupid if it works, and it works the entire time. The dude never gets...
Literally, I am one with the Force. Jesus. Different Force, sorry.
So much as a scratch. In his journal, journal, he literally writes that enemy sniper fire when it's close sounds like angry bumblebees when I used to rob their nest back at home. Like everyone take out an enemy sniper is bringing back fond childhood memories.
I'm in danger.
He also wrote in his journal, quote, "There's no use in worrying about shells if you can't alter things. Just ask God to help you and accept it. Men who worry destroy their peace of mind without doing any good." Okay, he's like the Terminator version of the slightly awkward homeschooled kid that you met at your first job in high school. Okay, don't give me that look. You know exactly what I'm talking about. From here, they start seeing more heavy combat. They have to go in and push the Germans out of this stronghold called St. Mihail. They go in, they push the Germans out. The Germans end up retreating. They take over the town. Hooray. After they take over the town, right outside the town, there's all these vineyards full of fresh grapes. Grapes are essentially candy, and these guys have been eating army rations for months. That sounds delicious. So all the soldiers are going out into these vineyards. They're eating grapes. The Germans send up weather balloons. They end up spotting a bunch of soldiers in these vineyards, and they start dropping artillery on them. All the soldiers retreat. The chain of command's like, okay, no more going out in the vineyards to eat grapes because they're going to blow your ass up. But Sergeant York knows he's not going to get blown up because God's going to protect him. So he sneaks off on his own against orders to go eat some grapes. Sergeant York is out there. It's peaceful. He's eating grapes. He's having a moment to himself in the silence. And then he turns around and it's Captain Danforth. And they kind of look at each other like, oh shit, we're both caught. And Captain Danforth is like, you're not supposed to be here. And York is like, yes, sir. And Captain Danforth is like, these grapes are delicious. And York is like, yes. Sir. From here, York and the 82nd are going from St. Mihail to another town called Chantal-Cherie. It has been held by the Germans for over 4 years. The entire duration of World War I, the Germans have been here. Whether York and the rest of the 82nd realize it at this point in time or not, they are about to participate.
I just realized, from all the history I was taught, it more or less covered World War II. I don't know a lot of the events of World War I. I've just come to realize. Because we just weren't taught it. We didn't have enough time in school to learn, in history class at least, because even World War II, the history teacher was like, we could do a whole course just on one faction's, thing during the war. Never mind trying to cover all of it, the entire, Axis and Allied forces during it.
Participate in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. It is quite literally the largest military offensive in U.S. military history. Not largest at this point in time, no, just the largest ever, period. Okay, to put this into perspective, when people think of huge military offensives, everybody automatically thinks of, D-Day, Saving Private Ryan, other TV shows and movies about World War II. It's this massive battle scene, right? D-Day had 156,000 men hitting the beach. The Meuse-Argonne offensive is 2 million men attacking the German front. It is a military operation that is quite literally so large, it is hard to conceptualize, okay? There's 50 states in the United States. 11 of them have less than 2 million people, okay? There's 11 states in the United States that have less people living in them in totality between old people, young people, kids, and the amount of soldiers that are about to rush the German line. So this is only one very, very small chunk of an enormous battle, but York and the 82nd show up to Chantal-Cherie. Germans don't even put up a fight for it. They literally just leave the town and head off into the wood line outside the town. Now, right outside the town, there's a big hill called Hill 223. Then there's a big valley, and then on the other side of that valley, there's 3 more hills in a triangular formation. So the 82nd goes in, they push the Germans off Hill 223, they take that hill. Now, they're looking forward, it's the valley, 3 triangular hills directly.
Oh yeah, wasn't it World War I, if I recall correctly, is when the machine gun came into play? Because if I recall, World War I was mostly trench warfare. Yeah, I believe it was the Argonne Forest. Interesting. Rosenberg.
In front of them, and they're going to have to cross that valley while the Germans are on top of those other 3 hills. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you the 82nd is now going to have to run through a valley, aka no cover, no concealment, while the Germans have the high ground in a triangular.
Our boy's just gonna walk through that field, isn't he? Through fucking Death Valley here.
Formation on top of hills with embedded machine gun positions. This is an absolute meat grinder of a situation. Okay, when I say the Germans are dug in, I don't mean they dug a little hole and slapped their machine gun over the side
No,
of it.
they're
they've been there
entrenched.
for 4 years, okay? They have chopped down trees, built up actual lumber walls to hide behind with roofs and camouflage the entire things. They can't even see where the German machine gun fire is going to be coming from, let alone effectively return fire. If they're going to have any chance of success at this, they're going to have
All
to
right,
coordinate with
what do I
artillery.
got?
They're going to have to drop artillery at the exact moment that they send a wave of men across the valley, and hopefully they're going to be able to overtake these hills and take out the Germans. So that's the plan. Orders come down at 6:10 a.m. on October 8th, 1918. American artillery is going to bombard the German position, hopefully get them to duck their heads and take cover for a minute, while America sends out 2 waves, 60 men that try to run across this valley and overthrow their position. So they wait, and while they're waiting, the orders actually end up changing because the unit that's supposed to be on the 82nd flank is hung up taking German fire, and they're not in the position they need to be in to be able to support the 82nd. Unfortunately, the runner with these new
1 second there. Now, if done right, future me will have edited that out.
orders that was sent to Hill 223 winds up getting killed, and the message never makes it to the 82nd. So as far as we know, they're still supposed to attack this objective at 6:10. 6 o'clock rolls around. No American artillery bombarding the position yet. 6:05. Still no artillery bombarding the position. At this point, people are looking around like, are we still going to fucking launch this attack without American artillery support? What do we do? The officer in charge is like, we were ordered to attack at 6:10. We're attacking at 6:10. Sure enough, 6:10 rolls around. The American artillery never shows up. He sends out 2 waves, 60 men. None of them make it. As this battle unfolds and the German machine guns open fire, the chain of command can see there's like 35 machine gun nests all over these 3 hills. There's absolutely no way they're going to make it past 35 German machine guns.
That's a lot of machine gun.
The command decides the best course of action is going to be to send out a small patrol of men. They're hopefully going to be able to skirt out around the backside of these German machine gun positions and make it to the center hill where most of their
is our boy going to be in it
and take out all those machine gun nests. Then they should be able to assault through the valley and up onto these hills. Okay, just so we're on the same page, this is also
it's still crazy.
Plan, okay, like yes, they're not assaulting the positions directly, but you know, if the Germans are straight in front of you, they're going to run off this way, still through part of this valley. Not as big of a part, not as much time to fire on them, but it's still a valley with no cover, no concealment, in broad fucking daylight. Like best case scenario, they all run really fast, the Germans don't hit them, but now the Germans know that they're coming. So it's not a good plan, but it's the only one we've got. So they pick 17 men. They've got a sergeant, 3 corporals, and a bunch of privates. One of those corporals is Corporal Alvin York. So they go down to the base of Hill 223, probably get a quick stretch in, hype themselves up, about to run through German machine gun fire. No big deal. They're getting ready and they're counting it down, and they're all going to hop up and start running for their lives. It's like 3, 2, 1, and right as they say 1, the German machine gun positions just start getting bombarded with American artillery. It showed up late, and it showed up at the perfect time when all these guys start running across this narrow stretch of the valley. All the Germans are forced to take cover, and none of the Germans see these guys clear the valley. Okay, I don't know if it's divine intervention, plot armor, fate, call it whatever you want, but in this particular case, shit worked out perfect.
Stop it on the enemy! We love you, God! Jesus Christ!
They make it through the valley completely undetected into the wood line, and now they spend the next hour and a half sneaking through the woods up and around behind the German position. After like an hour of sneaking through the woods in pretty much a straight line, the sergeant pulls off to the side and he's like, okay, do we think we've gone far enough that we need to start turning because we're going to be behind the machine gun positions now, or do we need to go a little bit further? He wants to consult his corporals, see what everybody thinks. First 2 corporals say they've gone far enough, they should turn now. Gets to Alvin York, and Alvin York, for some reason, feels like they haven't gone far enough yet, and he's like, I think we should keep going straight for a little bit further. Okay, again, I have no idea why Alvin York thought that. I don't know if he, has a feeling from God. I don't know if he can hear the narrator speaking because he's wearing the plot armor. He decides to keep going straight. The sergeant agrees. They go straight for a little bit longer, and they come up on this like 3-foot deep trench. Now, it's not a military trench, it's just like a 3-foot deep hole. They have no idea why it's there or what it's doing. It's clearly not a military trench, but it is going to be pretty handy for them to crouch down and walk in and remain concealed and go unnoticed. In hindsight, historians would figure out later that it was actually a trench that had been there for hundreds of years that was actually used originally as a marker between 2 separate pieces of property, which means the Germans didn't put it there, and they probably don't even know it exists. So they use this trench to get further and further. It slips them right past that first hill, hill and straight towards the hill that's in the center, which is their objective. So as they're making their way
Huh.
down, they come up on this little creek, and on this creek, there's 2 German soldiers just filling up an entire cart full of canteens to bring back to all the other Germans. Those Germans see the Americans, they shit their pants and take off running. York and his guys take off chasing them because they want to capture them or kill them so that they don't alert the rest of the Germans that they're there. As they're chasing these guys down, they come up onto this meadow, and in this meadow, holy shit, it's the battalion headquarters tent for the entire German unit. And right beside the tent, there's like 70 German infantry soldiers that are just sitting in this meadow, chilling, eating lunch. These were the reinforcements that the Germans had brought in to launch a counterattack against the 82nd Division. Now, the 2 Germans that they're chasing do not immediately cut out into the meadow because they don't want to run out into the open because then the Americans are going to shoot them. So they want to skirt this tree line and get as close to that tent as they can and then run into the tent and tell the German commander that the Americans are here. Okay, that's a good plan on their part as far as, you know, not getting shot and dying goes. But fortunately for the Americans, this gives them time to be like, fuck that, let them keep running through the wood line. They immediately advance into the meadow and attack these 70 soldiers that aren't carrying their guns. They're just sitting down chilling, eating lunch,
shoot.
and immediately force all 70 of them to surrender. Now, the 70 Germans are caught completely off guard. All they see is Americans running towards them with their guns up, yelling surrender. These guys have their guns, you know, all set to the side. Half of them are sleeping, half of them are eating. They think it's a huge American counterattack, so they surrender immediately, not knowing that it's only 17 guys. While the Germans are standing up, putting their hands in the air, the other 2 canteen Germans cut out of the wood line, run into the battalion command tent, and tell the German commander, Commander Vollmer, the Americans are attacking. He freaks out, grabs his pistol, turns around, goes to tell the 70 infantry troops that just showed up, get ready for a fight, and what he sees is they're already standing with their arms up in the air. They've already surrendered. He's like, what the He then turns around again, probably trying to quickly send a runner or send a radio transmission to his other guys up on the hill, letting them know the Americans are here, and right in front of him is 6-foot-tall, red-haired, red-mustached, ginger Alvin York standing there with his gun, and he's like, surrender. So Commander Vollmer, who actually went to college in Chicago and in Alvin York's own words, speaks better English than he does, understands exactly what Alvin York said, and agrees to surrender. York and Vollmer then leave the tent and they go out, and York's going to talk to the rest of his guys, and the Germans on top of Hill 2 with their machine guns have figured out something is going on, and they scream down at the Germans in German, presumably saying, get down. All the Germans drop and the German machine guns open fire. Before York's guys even know what's going on, they are already getting lit up by these German machine guns. In a matter of seconds, 6 Americans are killed, 3 are injured, leaving 8 men left in play.
Okay.
With 70 prisoners and German machine gunners up on the hill opening fire on them. Of the 9 American casualties, they include the sergeant and the other 2 corporals, meaning that the only corporal, the only NCO, the only leadership position left in play is Alvin York and a bunch of privates. Alvin York is now in charge. The rest of the Americans all drop to the ground and try to return fire, but they're mostly just taking cover. Alvin York rushes the hill by himself.
So, I'm going to kill each and every one of you. The only disappointment in it for me is that I only get to do it once.
The privates then get themselves oriented to the situation, and the 7 remaining dudes are both returning fire, trying to provide covering fire for Alvin York, while also trying to make sure that the 70 unarmed Germans behind them don't jump them and overpower them. York continues to advance under enemy fire, reaches a little swell on the ground, and drops down into a prone position, not because he's trying to avoid bullet fire. God does that for him. He just drops down prone so he can be more accurate. So now he's looking down the sights of his rifle, and he's just waiting for the German helmet to pop up. He's sitting there, he's yelling, surrender, give up. He's literally trying to be a nice guy about this. German helmet pops up, domes the guy immediately. And in the back of his head, all he can think is, man, these German heads are way bigger than the heads of turkeys back home when I was hunting. He's still as German helmets keep popping up, trying to man the machine gun, and every time a German helmet pops up, he fucking drops them.
You are amazing at this. How did you get so good?
Whacking moles.
And this goes on for a minute. Alvin York just being the polite homeschool kid Terminator, literally like, guys, seriously, please surrender. Bang. Okay, that's enough now. You guys can quit. Bang. Okay, guys, please surrender. Bang. During this phase of the battle, Alvin York is credited with somewhere between 18 and 23 kills. Okay, now to understand and comprehend what's going to happen next, you have to understand the perspective of the Germans that are up on top of the hill. They have the high ground, they have machine guns, they have fortified fighting positions, and they are in a firefight with one man, some ginger hillbilly from Tennessee, and somehow they're losing. And every time one of them builds up the courage to pop up over the berm, man the machine gun to return fire, this giant ginger sends their brain on a field trip. And just so we're on the same page, York is shooting an infield chambered in 30-06. That is a high-powered rifle cartridge that is commonly used for hunting elk and moose. This rifle round is significantly more powerful and way more scary than the scary AR-15s shooting 5.56 that the Army uses today. To put it into perspective, here's a watermelon getting shot by 5.56 and 30-06 at 16,000 frames
cartridge,
per second. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that if you're a German on top of that hill and you've just seen 20 of your buddies get their eyebrows sent into fucking orbit, that's starting to look like not that great of an idea, and you're probably looking for alternatives. Bearing that in mind, the Germans decide they're going to do something that tactically doesn't make a lot of sense. They're going to leave their fortified fighting positions, they're going to abandon the high ground, they're going to grab their rifles, fix bayonets, and they're going to charge this giant red-headed hillbilly and show them what's up. So
are you sure?
Hop out of their
Are you sure?
positions with rifles and fixed bayonets and bayonet charge Alvin York, which in hindsight was a complete mistake for them, and it worked out for Alvin York because Alvin was actually
You brought a knife to a gunfight.
out of rifle rounds altogether,
Okay.
and he wasn't going to be able to do anything else, but now he's got 12 Germans running at him, so he pops up, grabs his Colt 1911 chambered in 45 ACP. Bear in mind, he's only got 8 rounds and 12 Germans running at him. Alvin York immediately shoots one, drops him. At that point, 4 of the other Germans decide, okay, this is clearly the main character. I'm an anonymous henchman. I'm just going to call it a day. They hop back in the trench.
You haven't even got a name tag. You've got no chance. Why don't you just hold it?
So there's 7 Germans still bayonet charging him, and he has 7 bullets. He has to be absolutely perfect. Now, from the lead German's perspective, the guy that's out in front, obviously, he's the one that's going to get shot first. I mean, right? That's what makes sense. You shoot the closest threat first. That way, nobody comes to get you, right? So, as long as he doesn't get shot, everything's going great. He sees Alvin York fire. The bullet whizzes past him. Alvin York missed. Fires again.
He's not missing. He's not missing.
Again. All of the bullets, all 6 of them go whizzing right past him. He's got 1 bullet left. He gets shot directly in the stomach and drops. But what actually happened, Alvin York didn't miss. He didn't miss a single time. Alvin York knew that if he shot the dude in the front, everybody behind him was going to see it, and they were all going to take cover, and he wasn't going to have any ammo. So he decided to take out the Germans the same way that you shoot a flock of geese that are flying, and he took out the geese at the rear of the formation first, working his way to the front so the formation didn't scatter. He was shooting the man in the back instead of the man in the front, and
oh my god.
Now, cutting back to Alvin York's perspective during this bayonet charge where he's using bird hunting tactics to kill Nazis, bullets whizzing past him from behind him. Somebody is shooting at him while he's shooting these Germans. It's that German commander Vollmer, because remember, nobody bothered to take his pistol away from inside the tent because shit hit the fan so fast, and he's trying to save his own guys, which is pretty understandable. So while York is shooting at Germans with his pistol, Vollmer is shooting at York with his pistol, and York doesn't give one single fuck, because remember, he's on a mission from God, and God is going to protect him, and if he doesn't get protected, it's all part of God's plan, so it's going to be fine. So York just focuses on what he's doing and lets everything else work itself out, and of course, doesn't get a single scratch on him the entire time. Vollmer empties the pistol, misses every single shot. York lands every one of his. At this point, York turns around, Vollmer drops the pistol, puts his hands up. He knows when he's been bested, and he looks at York and he just goes, English? Like clearly asking, like, you know, hey, I speak English, let's talk this out. York does not interpret it that way and goes, no. To which Vollmer's like, what? And he goes, I'm an American. And he's like, just, no, I'm saying I speak English. Quit killing everybody. I'll get the guys up there to surrender so you don't have to kill everybody. At which point, York reloads his pistol, points it at Vollmer, is like, okay, go ahead. Vollmer starts yelling a bunch of stuff up the hill in German. Couple seconds later, a bunch of more Germans come out, no weapons, with their hands up, and they surrender too. Germans finish coming down the hill. They join the rest of the POWs, at which point, one of the 7 remaining privates comes up to York and is like, York, what are we going to do with all these prisoners? We don't have enough men to handle this many guys and get them back behind our lines. Vollmer hears this and he's like, what? I'm sorry, how many men do you guys actually have? And York is like, I've got plenty, don't worry about it. At this point, York, with Vollmer still at gunpoint, is going to use Vollmer to translate and get everything moving. He's like, all right, get your guys up, tell them to get in a column of 2. We're going to march out of here, tell them to pick up your wounded, tell them to pick up my wounded and my dead. They're going to carry him back to our lines. Problem, how on earth are we going to get back? Because we definitely can't go the way we came through the woods. We're not going to be able to keep track of like 100 plus prisoners through that dense forest. We're going to have to go out in the open, and the rest of the Germans are going to see us, and that's not going to work out. At which point, Vollmer chimes in, and he's like, well, you can take this gully right here, and that'll take you right to Hill 223. He's obviously trying to set him up for an ambush because he knows where all of his soldiers are, and York is like, well, we're not fucking going there. You know what? I'm the main character. We're just going to march right down the main road that goes straight to Chantal Cherie, straight to Hill 223. So that's what they do. They just take off ruck marching right down the middle of this main road in the middle of enemy-held territory because York is the main character, and it's all part of God's plan, I guess. So they're making their way there, and sure enough, they run into an entire platoon of Germans that are guarding the road because obviously, however, from the Germans' perspective, there's like 7 Americans and 100 plus Germans. There's absolutely no way that those Americans have those Germans as POWs, so they don't open fire. They end up walking up and approaching to see what's going on, figuring the Americans are the POWs.
Oh my God.
Once they get close enough to realize the Americans are the ones with the guns, York shoves his pistol into Vollmer's back and is like, make him surrender, tell him they're surrounded. Vollmer does what he's told, tells them to drop their guns. They're surrounded. They do it because Vollmer's the battalion commander. They drop their guns and they get taken as POWs too. From there, they just keep marching to Hill 223. As they start getting closer, the Americans see a massive formation of German uniforms approaching. They start freaking out, thinking it's a giant counterattack. They start moving men around, getting ready for a fight. And as they keep getting closer and closer, they're looking through field glasses and they see York's big ginger ass with a gun pointed at the German. And he's like, holy shit, York captured everybody. So they get to Hill 223. The 82nd commander meets him down there and is like, York, holy shit, how many men did you capture? To which York replies, honestly, I have no idea, sir. And the commander's like, all right, well, you're promoted to sergeant, by the way. Work. March these guys into Chantal Cherie, and I'll count them off as they march by, I guess. Commander then proceeds to count them off as they march by.
How many?
Captured 132 Germans. So
Damn.
York marches his POWs off to Chantal Cherie, and the rest of the 82nd resumes their attack because now the Germans have 35 less machine gun positions, and the ones that do remain don't have a chain of command to be giving them orders. So they take the objective, they secure the area fairly easily.
That's quite
makes it to Chantal Cherie,
a blow.
Battalion headquarters are. Battalion headquarters is like, we don't have the logistics for this many prisoners. March them up to regimental headquarters. Marches them up to regimental headquarters. They can't take that many prisoners either. March them to division headquarters. Marches them all the way to division headquarters. When he gets there, General Lindsay, like the main guy in charge of the 82nd, approaches York and is like, York, I hear you've captured the whole damn German army. To which York replies, just with sheer Forrest Gump levels of modesty, no sir, I only captured 132. Some food, finds a cot, lays down, writes in his journal for a little bit because, you know, he's had a pretty eventful day. In his journal, he writes, and I quote, so you can see here in this case of mine where God helped me out. I'm witness to the fact that God did help me out of that hard battle. For the bushes were shot up all around me, and I never got a scratch.
Aftermath, oh no.
Next morning, York reports back to Captain Danforth, and he requests to take out a small detail to go back to the site of his battle and look for any survivors, because that's just the type of guy that York is. Captain Danforth not only agrees to let him do it, but he's like, I'm going with you, and he brings some other high-ranking officers with him because they want to hear York explain what the fuck happened. By the time they get out there, there's no survivors. All the dead bodies have already been removed. There was never an official body count of how many Germans York killed, but pretty much everybody agrees it's somewhere between 20 and 30 that he had killed single-handedly. York then takes him to the patch of grass that was his firing position, and, you know, he was in the heat of battle. He wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. It was all part of God's plan. But looking at it in retrospect, everything around the patch of grass that he was on is absolutely shot to shit. Just hundreds of bullet holes all over it. None of them hit Alvin York. He dropped his canteen during that firefight. That canteen was still there, feet from his position, and that canteen had 18 bullet holes in it. Okay, literally the holy canteen. It's all part of God's plan. York finishes explaining everything that happened there. They head back to headquarters. This is like a big deal, right? I mean, you're gonna probably give this guy the Medal of Honor. They gotta really know what happened, and this sounds so incredibly unbelievable. Like, they need to make sure this actually happened before they write this up, right? So they interview York twice. Same exact story every every time. He's incredibly modest about the entire thing, tries to give as much credit to the other 7 privates as he can. They interview the 7 privates. All 7 privates are like, Alvin York's a fucking superhero. Some of the Germans are like, it was fucking crazy. I don't know. We couldn't hit the guy with bullets. The story is the same across everybody. It's one of the most well-researched battles ever. From here,
that's insane.
By October 28th, 1918, his unit gets pulled back out of the Argonne. They go to the rear, and then he gets placed on 10 days leave on November 1st. And while he's on leave, he sends a postcard back home to his mother. You know, he's probably got a lot to tell her. That postcard reads, and I quote, "Hello, I'm okay. Sending you a postcard view of a little of this country along the coast. It's a nice scene." Well, that's all. He's literally Forrest Gump.
That's all I have to say.
He literally is.
You said it all.
Now, like I said, he goes on November 1st, 1918. Guess what happens on November 11th, right as he's ending his leave? Germany surrenders. World War I is over. Coincidence? Almost unequivocally yes, but it's funny to joke that Alvin York was coming off vacation, so the Germans just decided to call it a day and end it. From here, Alvin York gets recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross. The only reason they weren't going to give him the Medal of Honor was because, well, the story was too unbelievable and nobody was willing to agree that actually happened, so they conducted an even more...
What do you mean? The enemy even agreed. The people that he captured even agreed. How the hell did he not get the medal? It's unbelievable. What do you mean? Everyone's story matched up.
Thorough investigation. Turns out it was all 100% legit. They upgraded it to the Medal of Honor.
There we go.
He gets awarded the Medal of Honor. From here, they get sent out to some parade field. They're ordered to pick up all the cigarette butts out of this parade field because there's some fancy French general coming in to do some ceremony or something rather. So York and the rest of the guys are out in this parade field for like 2 days picking up thousands and thousands of cigarette butts. Turns out the French guy that was coming was actually the French guy, Ferdinand Foch, the supreme Allied leader of World War I. He was actually coming for Alvin York. They have a big ceremony, and Ferdinand Foch awards Alvin York the French Croix de Guerre, essentially the French version of the Medal of Honor. He puts it right next to York's Medal of Honor and says, and I quote, "What you did was the greatest thing ever accomplished by any soldier in any of the armies of Europe." From here, York gets yanked away. He goes on speaking tours all over France. He does that for a number of months. He's finally ready to go home, goes back to America. The Americans find out. They want to know more about York. He does speaking tours all over America. At this point, he's still in the United States Army. He finally gets released from service, but the American public wants more. They want to know everything. He's getting $1,000 offers to go give speaking engagements, which back at this point in time, $1,000.
That's a lot of money.
He's getting offered $10,000 for his life story in a book. He's getting offered $50,000 to do a film about his exploits. He rejects all of it. He doesn't want any of it. He doesn't want the fame. He doesn't want to be.
He just wants to settle down, go back home.
He only feels like he did it because it was absolutely necessary, because he is the peacemaker. So that's it. He just flat out rejects everything, goes back into the mountains of Tennessee. He just wants to go there, live his life, read his Bible, marry his sweetheart Gracie, and that's exactly what he does. Time goes by and he still has people offering him money left and right for speaking engagements, movies, books, anything and everything you can imagine. He's getting offered money to endorse products. Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Eventually he kind of figures, this is a rare opportunity.
Because I feel like I can't even fathom what the money would have been in today's currency with the inflation and all that. That's gotta be crazy.
He could probably do a lot of good in the world if he raised all this money and did something productive with it. And he remembers, he wasn't really able to go to school as a kid. He has about a 3rd grade education.
Is he gonna make a school?
He go to school on weekends. There just wasn't a school in that part of rural Tennessee when he was.
He's gonna make a school.
Still isn't today. But if he could raise enough money, he could change that. He could affect the lives of all the kids around him, and that's what he decides to do. So that's what he does. He leverages his fame to raise money to open up schools for kids in rural areas so they can get an education. He goes on speaking tours, raising money. He sells the rights to his book. He sells the rights to his war diary that he kept during World War I. He sells the rights to a movie, goes on, be's the technical advisor. He ends up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I wonder how good that movie was.
Is millions. He ends up founding
like,
New York Institute.
If he was a technical advisor on a movie based on him, I wonder how accurate that is. It's gotta be pretty good then. I would hope, anyways.
Institute in Jamestown, Tennessee, which is a privately funded school, but it's open to kids for free. And this wasn't just like overnight or over a year. This took years and years and years to do. And over the course of that time, he raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he paid himself almost nothing. Like, he didn't build a new fancy house. He didn't buy a bunch of nice stuff for himself or his family. He was still living exactly how he grew up the entire time. Out of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he made, I believe he paid himself just over $6,000 over the course of like a decade. The man is truly selfless. He literally took just enough money to keep food on the table for his family and gave
He put everyone else before him.
everything else to this school. But as we all know, no good deed goes unpunished.
Okay.
Alvin York, the man with a third-grade education, was under the impression that because he was doing selfless stuff with the money, he was literally donating it to give kids an education, he thought that that was a charitable donation and that he didn't have to pay taxes on it. Well, apparently he was wrong because he wasn't a, 401c fucking charity or whatever the fuck with the IRS. So none of that counts, and Alvin York now owes a ton of money in back taxes, and the IRS is coming after him.
It's never too early to learn that the government is a greedy piglet that suckles on a taxpayer's teat until they have sore, chapped nipples.
Okay, and just so we're on the same page, this is like
Yeah.
the early 1940s. 2 decades have gone by, and the tax rate at this point in time is absolutely insane. The top marginal income bracket for federal taxes is 81%. He made $134,000 with his hit movie that came out in 1941. The IRS said he owed them like $90,000 of that money. Alvin York didn't have it. He used all the money to build this school and start teaching kids for free. When the IRS told him that he owed all that money, he had a net worth of $21,000. $20,000 of that net worth was just the value of the farm that him and his family lived on. You know, the same farm that his family has lived on since they came across the ocean and lived there in a fucking cave. Other than that, he had a car that was worth $700. He had $2.20 in his checking account, and he got a $10 a month stipend for being a Medal of Honor recipient. That was it. He gave everything else away. Thankfully, the government steps in because York doesn't have the money to keep funding this school. So the government steps in and is like, oh, you built the whole school for us. You bought instruments for the band, books, chairs, desks, everything. Oh yeah, we'd be willing to, take that over and make it a public school, which York doesn't give a shit. He literally just wants kids to get an education. So of course he signs it over to the government so they can keep maintaining the York Institute. And it is literally still in operation to this day. It is a public high school in Jamestown, Tennessee. In addition to that, thanks to a literal act of Congress, they forgive his debt, and he is now debt-free. Now, going back to his movie, came out in 1941, right as America is getting ready to enter World War II. It is a nationwide sensation. He becomes the most popular man in the country all over again. Because of the popularity of this movie, and because of the fact that Alvin York served in the 82nd Infantry Division, the All-American Division, when World War II kicks off and they start reactivating old units, one of the first units to get reactivated is the 82nd Infantry, which becomes the 82nd Airborne, which is still active to this day, and it is one of the most prestigious military units in the United States Army. In addition to that, it inspires tens of thousands of American men to join the military because they want to be a hero too, just like Alvin York, and one of those Americans is Audie Murphy, who would go on to become the most decorated war hero of World War II. Alvin York would go on to pass.
Did he cover him yet?
76, but his legacy lives on both in the school that he helped found and the 82nd Airborne Division. And that time, the Army tried to name a god-awful tank after him. Seriously, can we name something else awesome after this guy? Like the next sniper rifle, call it the York Peacemaker. That's a dope name. He deserves it. Let's do that. This man accomplished incredible and unbelievable things both on and off the battlefield, and then afterwards he went on to live a truly selfless life in the service to others. And that is why you should never forget the name Alvin York. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
It's always crazy the stuff these people accomplish. But no, like, Buddy did his part, literally came wanted to come back home, just settle down, do his thing, and then realized, oh, I can actually still keep making a difference with this power I've been gifted, kind of thing. It's like, maybe he really was sent by some other higher power. Who knows? Hard to tell. But, like, it's crazy some of the stuff that happens. 132 though, like, damn. Wait, I was gonna say, what is the movie about him? But like, oh wait, they already made a movie. I kind of want to see it just to see how good it is. So, Huh. Anyways, this is a long one. That's it from me. So, bye for now. Meow.